there's something to be said about really believing that there isn't any failure, that everything is feedback. Yes, I set up expectations. I expect that there is a solution. I'm
Mm.
hoping that we do find it.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Rob.
I'll do a quick intro for anybody who doesn't know you. So, I'm here with Steven Leeds, who's a colleague. Steve is one of the founders of the NLP Center of New York with his wife, Rachel Hott. And he's been practicing NLP and Ericksonian hypnotherapy for many, many years. I'm guessing 30 or 40 years, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Um, and Steve and I, when we get together at times, I think our conversation can move in a direction of where I'm trying to understand how Steve does some of what he does when he's coaching people. So it's sort of an informal model and conversation. And usually my questions come from observing Steve having coached somebody in a particular way over time. So I think that's what we're going to use as a jumping off point today. I'm going to talk about a few things that I've observed, and then we'll see if together we can unpack a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes that's allowing Stephen to show up a certain way with a client. So, um, so
And
Steve,
I'd like to add
yeah,
before you even ask the
please.
question,
Sure.
I appreciate you. You have demonstrated over the years this insatiable curiosity with the skills to elicit strategies to find out more about um, the inner workings of how we think, how we process. And it's nice to have it turned towards me
Mm,
since,
mm,
since that's what I do too,
mm,
um, which is to inquire, is to use this precision model of NLP to learn about things that the person may not know about. It's like when Bandler and Grinder modeled Erickson, he said they were able to tell him what he does that he didn't realize he did, but he
mm,
did it. It's like he had the skill, and so now he had this cognitive awareness of what he was doing. So I
mm,
appreciate that I get to learn about. Oh, that's what I'm doing, and I think that we all, when we do something well, it becomes unconscious, and
mm,
we don't know. Um, we don't have to know how we do it unless
mm.
we're teaching it. Then
Right.
teaching, So thank you. I welcome whatever questions you come up with today.
Well, I'm glad you welcome them now. We'll see as we go further. Um, uh, well, the place I wanted to start today was, in conversations over the years, one thing I've noticed, and you've said explicitly, is that when you're working with somebody, you generally have a sense, or what I would say, a positive expectancy that yes, we can do some good work together, and most likely get a good result or a satisfying result for your client. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, you're going to get 100% satisfying sessions all the time, but the sense I got from you is you have a sense like, I want to sit down to work with somebody. There's a high likelihood they're going to get some result that they'll find satisfying in a way. And so I wanted to unpack a little bit about how you're holding that. Is it just coming from having done it many times, or is it a feeling, and first of all, is what I'm reporting, does that make sense or match your experience?
Yeah, I would. And generally, yes, but we'll get into the more specifics about it too. But yeah,
Yeah.
I do think that it has changed over time.
Mm,
Um, I mean, I what you said is true for me. That when I'm approaching working with someone, I I believe that there is a solution for what they're dealing with. I think when I first started out working, like when I was 30 years old, uh, I believed there was a solution, but I tended to believe there were a lot of people who did it better than me. So I was learning, I was doing the best I could with what I knew at 30 years old and my training. And I had a lot of training in my 20s.
Mm,
So I made a lot of referrals. I said, oh, I think this person could. Um, so it was okay that I didn't know
mm,
and that there are people who know more than me, and but I still do it, but probably not as often as I used
mm,
to when 40 years ago. Um, but this idea that there is a solution that I do believe as it is presupposed in NLP that we have all the resources and um, Stephen Gilligan once said to me, um, and in a group, uh, if people have all the resources, then why did they need Erickson? Um, like they'd go to him and they discover all these resources that they had, but what happened? Uh, what was it about Erickson that brought it out? And I think he, if you will, knew that they had the resources, and he was really curious how they're going to identify what they are and how to access them. And I
yeah.
think that's where I come from, that people have what it takes, that they not consciously they don't know what it is. Um, and yet it's available on some deeper level. So
Mm,
I start out believing in them and um, and inviting them to explore. And I also think that there's something to be said about really believing that there isn't any failure, that everything is feedback. Um, and so all I'm doing is getting feedback, uh, or whatever I'm doing, I'm paying attention to the responses I'm getting and being flexible. And um, so, yes, I set up expectations. I expect that there is a solution. I'm
mm,
hoping that we do find it.
mm.
Um, um, I'm open to discovering what it is, um, but not a sense of urgency that
Mm.
must get it all done in this one session. So that
Got it.
is important. Um, some people get in their own way when they come in with a sense of urgency. There's an issue they've been
Mhm.
working on for their whole life, and now they want to. It's like they want to make sure it's solved in one session.
Mhm.
And I used to feel a lot of pressure. It's like, oh, I want to satisfy them. I want to give it to them, and if that happens, it happens. But that's not um, conducive to working through that. So I think I
Okay.
took a deep breath and
Sorry, I want to double click on that a little bit. Um, and there are quite a few things I want to double click on. But I'll start with that
I'll do my
last
best.
piece, which is first of all, you articulating that you're not going to come in with too much of a sense of urgency to perform at like, okay, this outcome in this moment. And because you're not going to come in like, oh my God, I got to get this result right now, that actually helps you be in a state that supports you doing good work. I'm sort of paraphrasing. Um, but the other thing that's interesting in saying that is like, okay, maybe the person comes in and says like, well, I need to get, a new job, or I need to get over stage fright. You're coming in knowing that you may not get all the way to that thing in one session, but I believe you have a sense that we'll get somewhere, and that somewhere hopefully will be satisfying, meaning it will be something that the person will leave and say, yes, we did some good work today.
It'll be significant and
It'll be
meaningful.
significant.
So,
Okay.
so I want to do something that's significant and meaningful
Mm.
for the person. Um,
Okay.
it's interesting you mentioned that because um, when I did my practitioner testing for
Mm,
NLP, Leslie
mm,
Cameron Bandler was testing everyone, and I worked with um, this man I never met before. He was in different training, and after working with him for about an hour and a half, um, whether I was actually sweating or not, I felt like I was trying to achieve this goal that he asked me for,
mm,
and I actually felt I still didn't have that presupposition, no such thing as failure, only feedback. I felt
mm,
I was disappointed
mm,
because I didn't get what he said initially he wanted to achieve.
mhm,
And um, and Leslie Cameron Bandler, after listening to me when I presented the case, she said she started speaking to him and
mm,
asking very similar questions and got just as far as I got.
mm,
And then she turned to me and I had said, I only got this much.
mm.
And and she said to me, you got a significant breakthrough. You got
Mm.
some significant um th- but she was holding her fingers the same distance as
Mm.
I was. Like I was
Oh,
saying,
interesting.
only got this. And
Mm,
she matched me, but said, but you got this piece.
mm,
Um, and it shifted. It was a reframe for me.
mhm,
Well, what does this mean? Um, and it also realized that people will will uh, make what they do less significant if it didn't match their expectations. And turns out I ran into this guy at a workshop um, 5 years later, and he said to me, um, I remember you working with me and really focusing on helping me achieve my outcome. And looking back,
mm,
that was a significant step in getting where I needed to be.
mm.
So, which we don't always have that feedback years later of,
Yeah.
in
Rarely.
retrospect.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate to get that. And by the way, I still, if someone says this is my outcome, I still believe it's possible for them to get it in one session.
Mm,
And let's see, let's, let's do, um, let's see what we can achieve here. With
mm,
that in mind, that's still a target,
mhm.
as, but falling short of the target is not a failure.
Yeah.
And I think that that is something that if I embody, it's something I'm teaching too. Hopefully,
Yes. Yes.
they're getting that also. Um, it happens when people say, I'm sure you've worked with people. So I thought I got over that. I thought I was I thought I worked through that. Well, obviously there was more work to be done, but
Mm,
people often get disappointed in themselves because they feel I handled it and they discover it's not all handled.
mhm.
But it is a process. And And people do come to NLP with this idea you're a miracle worker and you're going to make this change really fast. Um, so, but that expectation could also interfere with them getting what they want. Because,
Mhm.
well, it hasn't happened yet. They're looking at their,
Right.
it's been 45 minutes and I haven't gotten it yet.
Mm. I want to. I want to hop back to something you said right in the beginning, which was that when you were starting out in your 30s, you had a lot of people that you could refer someone to, and that you felt comfortable doing so. Um,
Most of them were my teachers, people I studied with.
I suspect that was a useful piece when you were starting out. But I was just saying, and the internet just interrupted us for a moment, so we're just coming back. I think that is a helpful structure, knowing that you can refer somebody to somebody else if you feel like it doesn't fit your current capability or your specialty.
Mhm.
Um,
I do remember when I first studied NLP that John Grinder um, said that, with all this technology of NLP being miraculous and magic and all that, he said that everyone, um, it's important that we do know as much as we know, but also to know that we do have present limitations, that
mhm,
even though we're doing the best that we can, um, and can keep growing and learning, there's to be able to recognize you may be working with a person that you are not um, adept enough or knowledgeable enough to help. And he
mhm,
said that everyone should um, be able to make a referral, to be able to recognize right now, I don't know. And,
mhm,
there are times when I've worked with a client and I was learning to be comfortable with not knowing, but at a certain point, saying, I've given it my best shot.
mhm,
Um, but I think I can give it a better shot. I can than 30 years ago, than 20 years ago, than 10 years ago. The
mhm,
more knowledge and skills you have, um, as long as you're not suffering from dementia or something like that,
mhm.
um, your cognitive skills have all these resources from many years. So I do think it's important for everyone not to feel like they have to um, know it all and could be the perfect coach or therapist for any given person.
Yeah, and it's one thing that's occurring to me as we're talking is I think at least the beginning of this conversation, I realized it was very much about a first or an early session with somebody. So maybe there is a little bit, especially working in NLP, where there's this reputation of quick results. It can be easy to sort of take that on, or I'll take that on sometimes, like, oh my, I better get a great result. I'm an NLP person, um, which is a little bit different than when you've been coaching with somebody for a while and you've sort of developed that you're doing good work, and that
Yes.
that you're delivering great sessions and they're making progress. And it reminds me of when I used to teach guitar. Like, I never felt like, oh my god, do I have to do the perfect lesson today? I knew that the lessons were at a certain quality. And yeah, I didn't really think about it too much. So
That's good.
it's sort of interesting. Yeah, yeah.
And even this idea, whenever that comes in about perfection, it's a driver for a lot of people to move towards in the direction of mastery, which I think is
Mhm,
what perfection is. It's like the ultimate mastery where you have nothing more to learn. It's
mhm.
perfect and it doesn't exist. Um,
Right.
I do remember when I was in yoga and people he says, okay, touch your toes. My fingers were very far from my toes. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to, reach that posture. But it
Mm.
didn't stop me. It was still a direction.
Moving in the direction.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, that's a really interesting point. What what was it that allowed you to keep going in an endeavor like that, like touching your toes, even though you knew, okay, most likely I won't get there. Um,
I think my metaphor is a mathematical one.
Hmm.
Um, do you know what an asymptote is?
No.
Imagine there's a line
Mhm.
and a curve that's going down like this.
FFX approaching zero.
Yeah. It
Mm.
never touches the line.
Yes.
But it gets closer and closer. And it's
Mm.
like maybe an inch away, then a half an inch, and a quarter of an inch, or an eighth of an inch, and a
Mm.
16th of an inch, and a 32nd of an inch. And it keeps getting closer and closer and closer to
Mm.
perfection, if you will.
Mhm.
Um, without ever. So there's something about learning to go just to this. It's still um, incremental,
Mm.
and that so you are learning, um, even if you never get there, because there's no
Mm.
there in that particular
Got it.
case.
Yeah. Well,
But
let me
that's
ask you a
okay.
different question. Yeah. But sorry, I get so excited, like, oh, I want to ask this and I want to ask that. Um, um,
And you can continue to be
get
excited and
excited.
breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm curious what your internal process is like in moments where you feel like, oh, I feel like we're not making progress at this moment, or um, yeah, like when things aren't going well or things are challenging. I'm curious where you go.
Well, if I'm noticing myself, and that happens, getting frustrated
Mm.
with myself,
Mm.
that the results I'm getting, um, I don't feel I'm getting closer.
Mhm.
Feel, I usually stop, breathe, um, make sure that I drop my awareness into my body, sensing what's going on for me,
Ah.
um, and and wondering where I might say out loud, let's take a moment. I'd like to take a moment to breathe. And um, I don't have a one answer to the question, but I get into a moment of curiosity again if I've lost it.
Yeah.
Um, and notice anything else I'm picking up um, that is going on for me. And I might ask the person, what's going on for you?
Yeah.
Um,
So you're
and so,
reconnecting to your center.
yeah. Yes, I connect to my center. I open up again to, because sometimes we can get so focused
Yeah.
and concentrated. So not only do we forget to breathe, but we can forget to open up to this larger space where the resources are.
Mm.
So it's a connection here. It's an opening up. Like right now, I'm looking at you. I started seeing the computer, my room, the space around me, and I'm still looking at you, but I've expanded my sense of
Mhm.
awareness. and connecting with you. It's almost, um, it's like starting with a clean slate. Um, it's okay. Let's start right now. Where are we right now? Um, um, and start where we are. What's happening right now for you, for me? Um,
What I really like about that is, um, you know, let's say you're off course or you're not sure where you are. I like that your response, instead of like, "Oh, what should I do next?" or going into your head, you kind of return to becoming resourced yourself before you start out again.
that's true. Yes.
Okay? That's something that I've observed you doing. If I was going to talk about the Steven Leeds um, approach at coaching, what I often believe I'm seeing is that you start talking to somebody, and that as you're talking to them, you're seems like you're making sure that you're in a resourceful, connected state, and that begins to guide them, perhaps, or almost acts like an invitation to also be
Hmm.
in a centered, resourceful state so they can have a different experience of their situation. So,
And
so this,
also, yeah, it's like, where am I right
mm,
now? And where are you right now? So it's giving them a chance to, if they're in the future, in the past, to come back and what is happening now?
absolutely.
Maybe I'm picking up in their frustration. Maybe they're being judgmental. Maybe they're being feeling guilty. Maybe something's going on that I'm not picking up. And
Mm.
with them, maybe um, something is. So I go into a place of I don't know. Let's just start. Let's where are we each right now?
And then that hopefully will give you some clues about where you might explore next.
Yeah.
Mm. Now, again, at the beginning, you were talking about this idea that you have this belief that a person has the resources, right? NLP presupposition that everyone has the resources that they need, at least for their next challenge.
And
Um,
and I would say, or they can develop them
mm,
because some of them may be undeveloped.
mhm,
Um, they may not. Um, so that's a caveat. So sometimes it's accessing a resource from the past, but that's only one source. The past, our memory of um, states that we've been in, or states we've observed other people being in. But we may have read about something like a state of the sublime, and it may be a word. What is that? What is the what does it mean to be in a sublime state? I remember reading about it. I didn't know about what that was. So how do you um it exists.
mm.
People labeled it, but what is it? What is what is the experience? Um and how do you go there?
You mentioned that Gilligan asked you, said, "Well, if people have all the resources, what's the problem, and why are they there, and why did they go to see Erickson?" And you said the word that popped into my head a few moments later, which is I don't I don't think it's just uh, an issue of people having all the resources. I think it's more an issue of people having access to the resources.
Hmm.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
awareness. It's at least when I'm stuck, I almost I almost define that as that I'm in a state where it's like I have amnesia about the resources that I have, or
Mhm.
certainly where I left them and where to find them, right? And I also noticed that when I feel resourced, I have amnesia for challenges. It's almost like the two areas aren't communicating. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting phenomenon. And
mm,
in those places, where are they? I don't have access to them. How do I get access to them? I do think that sometimes we um, we don't realize how we're blocking the resources. There are things we do unintentionally that we're actively interfering with the pathway to to receive those resources. So I also pay attention to when people say, I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. That's that, first of all, it's that state of I've tried everything um, is definitely, if you believe that, then it's it.
mm,
That, that, the versus, I know there are many things I haven't tried.
mm,
Um, and one thing that people do is um, they go, "Oh, well, I don't know," that versus "I don't know."
mm,
I wonder, and s- and I often encourage people to make the distinction between what happens when they go, "I don't know," and "I don't know,"
mm.
and to be, because I think those um, distinctions can help move a person from a place of stuckness. Um, like, I don't know. There's a presupposing when someone says to me, I don't know, they're not simply acknowledging that they don't know.
I don't.
The truth is they don't know consciously, and they're adding something. I should know. I'm supposed to know
It's a
what's wrong with
problem.
me. I'm an NLP trainer and I should know. Uh,
Mm,
or I'm a therapist. I'm supposed, all the stuff that's added. That's why um, the phrase in hypnosis, the um, attempted solution is the problem. Mm. There's no problem. They don't know. That's not a problem.
mm,
But if they become afraid they're not going to know in time, or they're never going to know, or they should know something's wrong with me, I'm not perfect,
mm.
um, all that stuff is mm, can be explored, um, and it can be bypassed if the person is willing to step into that state of wonder. Because that's the place you want to work from, both you and the client. See, you can both be wondering what resources they need for a given situation. And they can say, it's almost like a door opens for me. I don't know. And
Mm.
you're opening up to infinite resources where they're more, it's like, are we shutting down or are we opening up? Um,
Yeah, and I think again, you're having an experience of not knowing from a place of feeling somewhat resourced,
mhm.
and your client is having an experience of not knowing from a place of that being a problem. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, and the world, my world's going to fall apart as a result. So it's funny in the end, the not knowing is not the issue. It's more can they move into a place of feeling like I can be okay with this.
That's why it is often said that hypnosis is the optimal state of problem solving,
Mm.
that there are certain states that are not conducive to problem solving
Really?
and certain states that are more conducive to um, to learning.
Yes.
And uh, you know, you know, people have heard, like a parent say, "You'll never learn," or something like that that sticks with a person, a belief, um, as opposed to how am I going to figure this out?
Mm.
And and this
And I
learning,
can figure it out.
uh,
Mm.
what a different
Um,
message between, you know, you know, what's wrong with you, or um, how could you have been so stupid, or yeah, versus, you know, I don't know. So I do think that's sort of a basis for whatever's going to happen. So
mm.
I do want to create an environment where people can access that state.
Of not knowing and feeling centered or resourced or open. Or when you say that state, are you meaning trance specifically or?
Um, yeah, and I see it as a state of wonder and curiosity and
Mm.
optimal learning. So let's operate. Let's have a conversation from that place,
Mhm.
um, which means I need to
Yes.
go into that state first.
Yes.
Robert Dilts he calls it a coach state.
Yes.
People,
Yeah.
different people have different being present, being in the moment. Uh, there are certain states that we can invite other people to join us in that state. You know, the poem by Rumi, which goes beyond right doing and wrongdoing. You know that
Mm. Yeah.
I may misquote it here, but I think it starts out beyond wrongdoing and right doing. There's a field. Um, I'll meet you there.
Mm.
And when I first heard that, I was imagining a grass field, and I later kind of took it not so literally to a state, a place, or beyond blaming, judging, whether it's blaming yourself or blaming somebody else. Where as long as you're in that state is going to limit you. There are
Mm.
things you're not going to see and hear and recognize. And um, because if you show a person what they're doing that is limiting, how they limit themselves, because we all do that,
Mhm.
the first thought is to blame themselves. I
Mm.
shouldn't do this. I should have known. So they're not in a state of curiosity. And whereas, "Oh, that's interesting. I do the same thing my father does." Um, you know, and they maybe they've been blaming their father for the way he is, and and are and don't want to admit that they are doing the same pattern that their father does. So the judge is there. How do you um, how do you
And they're certainly not, they're not looking for resources. If they're just in a should, like I should be doing, they're not open, surveying and in a state of mind where they could find resources, right? Or get curious.
because they're not in a resourceful state. in a way,
Yes.
they're looking for the resource, but they're
Mm.
saying, uh, you know, I'm never going to get there. But that is
Yeah.
how they are blocking themselves. So
Hmm.
sometimes we need to look at how am I blocking or interfering with um, my own um, journey, my own self discovery. Um,
Mm.
that they're they may be beating up on themselves, and because people say, "Oh, I really beat up on myself." This is maybe well, teach me how to do that. If I were
Are
you,
you?
how would I go
Yeah.
about beating up on myself? Uh,
Mm.
and sometimes they don't have to tell me; I can hear it. I can I can see the patterns of how people do that, how we do
Yeah.
that.
Mhm. So when when you, I'm going to ask something in perhaps a slightly different way, but when you can't find the resources, what what do you do? Or when you find yourself in a stuck state?
Well, you know what? It's a little bit like if I'm doing Wordle or I'm doing spelling bee. I give it a rest. I
Mm.
I say, okay, um, let my unconscious work on it. Um,
Mm.
I I don't know, um, but I
So
trust it,
again, you pause. So there's a pause. There's a stepping away for a moment.
and I do something else. I put it down for a moment, knowing that it's still um, important to me, and I'll come back to it.
Mm.
And
Right.
then it's interesting. I think a lot of people have had the experience. Let's say there's a thing called spelling bee in the New York
Mhm.
Times. We have to identify words, 4-letter words, 5-letter words or more. And I'm looking and it's like, I know they're there and I don't see them.
Mm.
And I'm looking. And usually what's happening is I'm looking and getting into some type of, call it a rut of I'm thinking the same way and I
Mm.
can't come up with, so I put it down. I do nothing. And I'm trusting my unconscious is still in the background processing it. When I
Mhm.
when I bring the screen up again, suddenly I see words I hadn't seen before
Mm.
without trying,
Mhm.
without any effort. How does that happen? And I don't know, but it does happen.
Mhm.
And so in some ways, um, I'm giving it a rest. I'm um, So that's one thing that I do, because basically it's breaking the pattern. It's like we get into these patterns, and um, how do you um, br- just to interrupt the pattern in some way? And it could be different each way. How do I break this pattern? I'm a root
Mm.
pattern, and I don't even know what it is.
I was laughing because I was thinking of the old thing of like, well, it hurts when I do this, and it's like, well, okay, so stop doing that, right? Um, and it's having the faith.
And stop doing this. Well, what else could I do? Well, I can do this.
Mm.
I could do this. And then you can begin to think of um, all these ways. Someone once said to me, um, think of all the things you can do with a paperclip.
Mm.
And you start generating these different things that you can do with a paperclip. If we really, um, I'm sure you can think of a number of things, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, now think of things you can't do with a paperclip.
I was almost amused to find that I found one. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. It's something I can't do with a paper clip. I can't eat it or make a sandwich with it. So
Well, actually, you
I guess I
could.
could eat it, but yeah,
So in a way, you could make a sandwich with it. Um,
yeah,
um, but it would have some negative consequences. But
mm,
you wouldn't do it. But you can.
yeah.
Anything else you can do with a paperclip?
Mm. I can't fly with a paper clip. Like
You
you
can't
can
really.
fly like you can fly with a hang glider. I don't, but you couldn't just do that with a paper clip, or certainly not successfully. Um,
How about a
what?
big enough paperclip with
Yeah, if it was big enough
no,
and had wings, then you could. Yeah.
well, no, that's my point. You could take something you can't do and use your creative mind to figure out how you could do it. Well,
And
what's it?
what I'm discovering here, Steve, is that like this uh technique, of talking about a paper clip, that's one way of inviting or eliciting curiosity, right? Or creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me like we could talk about so much of what you're doing when coaching, or certainly what Erickson did. He was very good at eliciting curiosity and creativity, as I think you are. It's like um because people want an answer, like, and they want it immediately. And when that isn't possible, a very powerful state is curiosity or creativity, because you might be likely to find something to try, right? But what I'm realizing again is that I think you're good at teasing out or provoking a situation that allows somebody to get into that curious or creative
Mm-hmm.
state.
And of course, yes, yes, no ands or ifs or buts.
Yeah.
Um, now there is an end. Um,
And
and if they're not in a creative, and I'm saying things I never really thought about consciously as um, when they're not in a
right.
creative state, um, I am wondering to myself, um, is it that um, do they realize it? Are they aware that they're not in a curious place? And I might ask them, um, you know, are you are do you know about what it's like to be in a state of wonder? Um, um, and are you in that state right now?
Mm.
Um, and if you were to go into a state of wonder right now, do you know how to do that?
Mm.
Um, and um, and you've been there before. Would you like? Do you think it would be useful to enter into that state right now? And I'll get information. They may say um, it's not useful, and I might say, well, that's surprising. You know, so you proof. If this, what state are you in right now? And they
Mm.
might say anger or frustration. And I might say, well, what's important about staying angry and frustrated um, right now? Um, how is it serving you? So again, I'm getting curious.
Mm.
I'm staying in that state of wonder um, about and helping them be curious about the state that they're in rather than saying, get into a state of wonder. Um, it would be good for you.
Right. Right. Mm.
So again, how do I stay in a state of wonder and curiosity? And of course, we're not asking in NLP and Ericksonian a lot of why questions, like why
Mhm.
is you in this state, to bring them
Mhm.
into their head. It's more, what are you aware of?
Hey.
How are you aware of it? So a lot of process questions. So curiosity and wonder is in a particular direction of the what
Mhm.
and the hows.
Mhm.
What are you aware of right now? Um,
And so much of your, I keep calling it an invitation to them, is to demonstrate it again and again and to be there, to be in that state yourself, to model it for them. And hopefully, it sort of becomes contagious in a certain respect. Like, oh, it's not just a question like, oh, how do you get into a state of wonder, right? Um, but it's really letting yourself get in that state, which I think starts to demonstrate to them how to get into that state.
yeah. I think part of it is admitting that you don't know.
Mhm.
Um, and I use that word in admitting, like
Mhm.
admit it that you don't know. Um, and it's like that can be very defensive, right? I don't want to admit that I don't know. Um, that's often accepting that you don't know right now. That is
Mhm.
often the first step. Um,
Mhm.
we're living in a world that people are supposed to know. In their jobs. I mean, look, if you're an air traffic controller, you need to know.
Mhm.
There are things you must know. If I don't know what to do, um, maybe if it's an unusual situation, like when when that pilot landed in uh, the Hudson River, um,
Oh,
you know, he went into a creative with his knowledge, and he made a decision that
yeah.
wasn't. Many people say, "What do I do here?" And he had to quickly make a decision about that. That wasn't a standard protocol. It wasn't what he was taught.
Yeah. It's interesting. I often use the versus the air traffic controller. Sometimes I'll say to my clients, um, that when a situation is urgent, being like, oh my God, or tense doesn't really contribute. And I said, if I went to a surgeon, I wouldn't want them freaked out. I wouldn't like, oh my God, they're like this. I want them to be calm, to know what to do. So I'd like them to know, but I'd also like them to be pretty sharp if they encountered a situation that was new. Like I'd like them to be able to respond to that like that pilot did in that moment. So it's not about getting into tightening up, but it's more of a focused
Yeah.
state.
Right. Because I think a lot of people think, you know, there's relaxation, like when you're at the beach, and
Yeah.
yes, it's like it's downtime. It's not alert. It's like I just need to space out, and
Mhm.
it's not focused. Uh,
Mhm.
and then the other extreme is this gripping, focused attention where you're so
Right.
tight and and um and this that so there's a place of a relaxed presence. So you're attentive, you're aware, you're paying attention, and you have to pay a lot of attention externally, um, and yet internally find that center. Um, so the other extremes could be too relaxed or
Mhm.
too tense. You know.
Yeah, that's one of the favorite things that I picked up from yoga. there's the state where you're overly focused or focused is called being rajasic. Like, oh, I got to get my goal. I got to, and then the one where you're too reclined is tamasic, right? And then
Mm,
being in the middle or being centered is called sattva, which is not just a bed, but it's actually a state. Um, and which I feel is a dynamic sort of state, sort of pulsing between the two of like, there are things that I want and I can be relaxed and, so.
that's nice. I like that reference, and um, that is another tradition that describes a very similar um, um, place. So, which is not either or.
Mhm,
It's a both and
mhm,
place where you can have access to both at the same time. Like I remember years ago, I was working with a man who was working on he failed his medical board. I guess that's what they are. Twice.
mhm,
He was studying again,
mhm,
and and we basically anchored. You don't want to be, you don't want to be too relaxed on a test, and you don't want to be so tight that you're closing off access to the information you studied and the things you know. You, it's there, so you want to be able to trust that it's there. So we worked on finding a state um, of centered, relaxed,
mhm,
alert,
mhm,
trusting that um, this, we know the conscious mind can only be aware of seven plus or two pieces of information. The
mhm.
rest is on an unconscious level. Um, and part of what we're doing, I think, is learning different ways of trusting the unconscious.
Mhm,
Um, but if an actor goes on stage and they didn't practice, it doesn't matter how much they trust their unconscious uh,
mhm.
if they don't know their lines. Um,
Yeah,
but if you study your lines and practice the lines, there's a certain point where you do have to um,
where you can let
trust.
go. Mhm, mhm. Well, let's pause there for today. And thanks, Steve. I always enjoy asking these questions and hearing what comes up, and then it leads to more questions and more insight. So and thank you for being a great role model of coaching and of these sort of states of curiosity that we were talking about.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure. You did
Great.
you did what you always do. Just activate. Um,
Mm,
you know, mm, um, what is the there's a term in NLP, derivational search. Have you
mm.
heard that term?
Yes, yes.
And
Yep.
questions kind of send us to these different places. So,
Mm.
you know, thank you for inviting me to explore, you know, all these spaces I haven't been to before.
Great. All right. Until next time. Thanks, Steve.
Let's pause so we can
Yep.
stop recording.